Good evening and welcome everyone to our Women in STEM program in April of 2021. I'm so delighted that all of us could appear here today and that all of you Scouts can participate. We have a marvelous panel of professional women in STEM. When I talk about STEM, I'm talking about scientific, technology, engineering, and math careers. As you know, STEM is an important part of the Scouts BSA program and venturing and the Boy Scouts of America in general. We hope that all of you have been enjoying the programs and STEM that your troops and units have had, but to enrich your program further, we'd like to have some recurring programming on women in STEM, and this is an outgrowth of the program of Troop 37, the Boys Troop, and Troop 4201, Girls Troop, to introduce individual speakers who are in STEM careers to our Scouts. And what that does is provide you an opportunity to see successful professionals in their careers, how they got to where they are, why did they choose their profession, what do they like about their profession, what they don't like about the profession. And hopefully these role models will give you some idea of some of the career paths that you could take in your own career. STEM is near and dear to my heart. My name is Stephen Wu. I'm the Scoutmaster of Troop 4201 and used to be the Scoutmaster of Troop 37. From 2010 to 2011, I was chair of the American Bar Association, Science and Technology Law section. So I'm a practicing lawyer and currently serve as chair of the Artificial Intelligence and Robotics National Institute of the American Bar Association. And through that, I've been blessed to have many contacts with successful professionals. And we especially want to bring to you today some women who have had STEM careers so that they could share their experiences with you. So tonight, after my initial introduction, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator. So our moderator is Lori Deal, PhD. She is the Executive Director of Research Pathology for Gilead, and she can describe her career path more. But we will also have Katie Gray, Nancy Mason, and Iris Colon. So with that, I will turn it over to Lori Deal, who is your moderator. So please take it away, Lori.
Hi, I'm so pleased that you invited me to participate tonight, Steve. Have a very soft spot in my heart for Scouting. My son, who's a second-year student at Cal, was an active Boy Scout. I've watched your son and then your daughter be very successful in Scouting, and it's a tremendous experience, I think, for everyone. So yeah, I am originally trained actually as a veterinarian, and then I did a residency in pathology and have worked in drug development for many years. And so now I'm the leader of the pathology group at Gilead. And so in many ways, I've touched different roles in the STEM field. And we can talk more about that later, but I'm gonna let my co-panelists introduce themselves. So Nancy, would you introduce yourself next?
Sure, thank you so much, Lori. It's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Nancy Mason. I'm currently working at NVIDIA Corporation. I've been there about 9 years. Prior to that, I've spent the majority of my career in semiconductors, which are the chips that are used in everything from cars to computers to one of the things that NVIDIA is known for is not only our graphics cards, but also supercomputing. As an engineer, I've held a variety of different roles, from reliability engineering, quality engineering, most recently, I moved in chain management. That's an interesting thing where, you know, the engineers create the technology, the designers create the technology, and then I work with our suppliers to actually get it built. Scouting is also near and dear to my heart. I've been an adult leader both for Cub Scouts and also for Boy Scouts, and I have my 3 sons are Eagle Scouts. So I'm really excited to be here today.
Katie, would you go next?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here today as well. Also, love Scouts. Both my son Jack and Henry have participated, and my husband Andrew Gray is the Scoutmaster who's on this call as well. So, in terms of STEM, I think I have one of the most fun jobs, interesting jobs that you can think of. So I work not necessarily directly in STEM, but I work for a venture capital firm. So I'm investing in a lot of STEM, and basically kind of need a background in STEM in order to do this kind of investing. But I work for a firm called In-Q-Tel, which is actually a strategic investor that invests on behalf of agencies in the federal government, in the US federal government, primarily in the intelligence community. So I'm investing on behalf of like the CIA, the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, other agencies on the federal level that are basically involved in our national defense. Yeah, so that's what I do today. I have a very winding background that ended me up where I am today. Probably most recently, after I got my business degree at Stanford, my master's in business administration, which is an MBA. I did a startup that was bought by another company, ended up working in the tech industry for about, I guess about 10 years or so before moving to In-Q-Tel, and I've been at In-Q-Tel for about 10 years. So I'll stop it there and can get into more detail with questions.
Iris, would you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much also for inviting me to participate in this, I think, amazing activity. I'm looking forward to hearing my co-panelists talk about their careers. And thank you, Steve, for inviting me as well. It's truly an honor. And I also have a very soft spot for scouting. I'm here as part of this panel because I'm in science. I'm a medical doctor. I'm a physician. And I also love scouting because I was a Girl Scout myself. I achieved the Gold Award in Girl Scouting. And then my son is part of Troop 37. And that's how I know Steve. And I was also den leader for 5 years of our PAC 74 at our local Santa Rita school. And I love scouting. So I feel very honored to be sharing tonight with Scouts. In terms of my STEM career, I basically loved science all my life. I loved school. I loved studying a lot. I loved just reading, and I loved helping people. And I can't say I always knew that I wanted to be a physician, but slowly through my journey, I went into science. After high school, I went to a science degree in college. And then I had a chance to do scientific research at a lab. And it really kind of fostered my love for science and for discovery and continuous learning. And I always loved helping people and giving back to the community. So I felt like going into medicine will be a good fit for me. And I had a lot of mentoring, which is very important in trying to forge your career and trying to see what you really want to do. So I'm very grateful to very good mentoring along the way. And so after college, I went to medical school, and we can talk a little bit more about medical school later if that's what the Scouts are interested in. And then from medical school, I really loved obstetrics, which is the care for women, for women's health care, and for achieving a healthy pregnancy. So I went into OBGYN, that was my residency. And then my passion was really in the obstetrical part of patient care. So then I did a fellowship at Stanford, and that's how I came to California. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. And I did a fellowship in high risk obstetrics and maternal fetal medicine. And since then, I've been practicing high risk obstetrics at Santa Clara Valley Medical Center, which is our county hospital in San Jose. And I've been there now 16 years. So, so I'm thrilled to be here tonight. And thank you so much.
So Iris, you started, you gave some background on your education, but just for all these young people who are probably thinking about their careers at this point, can you give them a rough idea of how many years it takes for each step? So you said you did undergrad and medical school and then specialty training. What kind of a number of years does that look like?
Yes. So, so to become a doctor, to get your medical degree first, you go to college and you finish a degree in, actually, it could be in any science or any field that you like, as long as you complete the requirements for medical school within your bachelor's degree. Most people, I have to say, do have a bachelor in any of the sciences. So mine was in biology, but it can be biology, chemistry, physics. I did have some other colleagues in medical school that their bachelor degree was in a different field, but then they transitioned into medicine. So then they have to complete those specific courses that you need to have for medical school. So it's 4 years of college, then medical school is 4 years. The first 2 years are very academic, meaning it's many courses and laboratories and pathology. And then the last 2 years are clinical, where we have an opportunity to rotate through different specialties so that you can get exposed to all those different fields and then decide which one you like. So that's 4 years of medical school, and then you go ahead and do a residency in your field of choice. My field of choice was obstetrics and gynecology, so that's 4 years. It can be general surgery, that's anywhere from 5 to 7 years. It could be pediatrics, which is 3 years. Internal medicine, 3 years. So everyone is a little different duration. Or some people after medical school, they really love the research. So they do a PhD in research in a laboratory, right? So it can be an MD PhD, or it can be after MD, you then go to your PhD. If you go clinical like I did, then you do a residency. After that, I could have practiced as a general OBGYN, but I really liked the obstetrics and high risk pregnancy. So that was a 3-year fellowship in only that very specific field. So for me, total after high school, it was 15 years of education. And it goes every year, right? Like we still go to trainings and you need your CME. So you really need to love science and to love to study.
Thanks, Iris. I'm sure that sounds like a long road to all of our young people, although I'm sure that when you did it flew by.
Yeah. Well, I really think you just got to love what you're doing. And to me, once I entered residency, it was a joint, it's like a joint thing. It's like you're a student kind of, but you're also a doctor already. So you have a little bit more confidence, and you are working at the same time, and so it's a very exciting time in life, actually. But I'm glad residency doesn't go forever either.
Thank you, Iris. Katie, I agree with you that you have a very cool job. I've spent my whole career on the other end, hoping that venture capitalists would give money, or working with companies that need venture capital money. So I think it would probably be very interesting to our young people if you could tell them sort of what kind of an education I know you mentioned the MBA before, but maybe you could sort of tell the whole progression through education, and then sort of how you ended up in venture capital, which I don't think many people get told by their high school counselors to consider.
Right. Yeah. No, it's so interesting because I feel like when I was in high school and even when I went to college, I literally, the only things I knew were like, you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be a businessman, maybe veterinarian, but, it didn't feel like, I mean, given kind of the breadth of careers that are available, you just don't know about them, like even really in college. So I actually went to Stanford undergrad and I did a human biology degree, which has absolutely nothing to do with what I do now, though I guess it is somewhat STEMish. Um, and and then, did a number of different things kind of in the education field, and then really kind of turned to the STEM field when I went back for my business degree. So I did an MBA at Stanford. Like I said, I joined a company after my MBA that was a startup company that was developing basically software for mobile phones. So it was sort of pre-iPhone days. And I will say that really, in terms of kind of my technical education when it comes to software and hardware, which is really what I'm investing in now, it was very much sort of learning on the job, and a lot of kind of like self-directed learning. So I mean, that's one of the things actually that I love most about my job, is that every single day I'm learning about what's the cutting edge of the fields that I'm working in. I meet with lots of people who are super smart on things, and they they're pitching me on their companies, they're telling me about their technology and how it's different from other companies out there. So I feel like in my case, I have really, sort of not necessarily had the academic training for the technology side of it. Obviously, the MBA kind of is the training for the business and the investing side of it. But I will say, like, I maybe it would be helpful for me to say, like, if that was what you wanted to do in your life, what would I recommend that you do today? Because the venture capital industry is kind of a younger industry anyway. I don't even know if people, who were going to college when I did, like, even, that was even a thing you could go do. So what I would recommend to people is, always in college, like, study something that you enjoy. And if you enjoy STEM, that's great, because that's actually, if you want to become a venture capitalist, like, that's probably your best bet, is to study something in STEM. Like, if I could go back now and redo things, I would probably want to do, either computer science, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, for the types of investments that I do. And obviously there's people who are investing in life sciences who, typically will have either biology, chemistry, materials science, and probably advanced degrees in those as well. And then after undergraduate, what I would do, again, if I could do it all over again, I would recommend doing, some kind of either lab work, a master's, a PhD, something where you're really getting, kind of deep in the technology side of things, or to do something like work in investment banking, or, some kind of finance kind of role. And then, you pretty much, like, there's sort of two pathways into venture capital. Either you go kind of the finance route, where you, you have the technical background, you get the business degree, you work in finance, and then you can get hired into venture capital. And the other pathway is much harder, which is you actually found a company. So, you know, if you've got some brilliant idea, you found a company, or you become a senior manager at a company, and then that sometimes can sort of translate, you know, later in your career into going into venture capital as well.
And Katie, just because I'm not sure that people have as much familiarity with what a venture capitalist does, would you maybe give a 10,000-foot view of what?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think, you know, being in Silicon Valley, you guys are probably more aware of kind of the technology and the startup world than any other location on earth. But essentially what venture capitalists do is when people have an idea for a company and they want to get started, they want to launch a product into the market, you know, whether it's a vaccine or whether it's, you know, a camera, or, you know, any kind of thing that they want to, like a, you know, Instagram, you know, all of these different things. Basically, they need some money to get started. They need money to pay their employees. They need money to set up an office, to start building the product out, et cetera. And so the people who provide them money as investors, you know, they are venture capitalists. And so there's a lot, you know, it's a very heavy concentration in Silicon Valley of venture capitalists, but really kind of globally all over the world. And essentially what we do is we evaluate businesses and ideas, looking at how big the market might be. You know, it's really kind of an investment from a financial perspective more than anything else typically. My lens on it is, as doing it, you know, for these federal agencies, is really more about can we seed and fund technologies that are commercial technologies, but could apply to these federal agencies and allow us to kind of get the most advanced and most innovative technology into our government agencies as quickly as possible. But basically what venture capital does is funds new companies, helps them to get their ideas started, helps them to grow until they become, you know, profitable companies.
Thanks, that's great. Nancy, could you, so you're doing something now that is not exactly, I think, what you trained for, but could you talk to us first about the career path to engineering, and then maybe expand on sort of how that prepared you for what you do now?
Sure, very happy to. First, I had a very non-traditional path through college. I always say I was on the 11-year plan. And that was to get my 4-year degree because I worked full-time while I went to school and went the junior college path. And so as I was working, I got into industry. And I first worked in machine shops because I was good in math. And I was interested in all things mechanical. And I did dream at some point of being an engineer. That was sort of my long-term goal, where I wanted to go eventually. But I didn't have a straightforward path through college. So I went the junior college route and I worked in industry and started out in quality and as a mechanical inspector. And, you know, learned about, you know, it was primarily mechanical engineering. And then as I finished 2 years of school and moved to a 4-year university, I went into physics, which is a very pure science, and really enjoyed it. Just absolutely loved physics because, you know, I would say, look around the world and that's physics in action. You know, no matter what it is, it has a foundation in physics. And so while I was getting my physics education, I was also advancing in my career and eventually moved into engineering first as a junior engineer. And then when I got my bachelor's degree, then I advanced to a full-fledged engineer, first in quality engineering and then reliability engineering. Now, what is I can relate, I think it was to Katie saying, you know, when you're first starting out in college or even high school and you're looking, you don't even know what careers are out there. And I would say that that was very true for me for engineering, was I didn't know how many different types of engineers there were. So when I was working, I had the opportunity to see these different engineers where you have design engineers that are going to design the product. You have product engineers who work on that design and bring it into mass production and solve all of the problems associated with getting that product out to market. You have test engineering, which whatever product you're building, you have to test it before you send it to your customers. And that was where I actually, I was a failure analysis engineer, which if one of our products broke, our customers would send it back to us, and someone has to analyze and figure out why did it fail. Now, in terms of pure fun, that was probably the most fun job, because it's a little bit of mad scientist. You get wet chemistry, dry chemistry, all sorts of really cool lab equipment that you get to use. So I really enjoyed that. And it was also detective work. But the area I spent most of my career in was test engineering. And when I was a failure analyst, I learned you have to make the parts work, or you have to try and make the parts work. And to do that, we use testers and you write code. So that was where I learned how to do computer programming. And it was specific to writing test programs to make this piece of equipment work and send the signals to the parts. And there's just some real beauty of writing computer code. There's a nice structure to it. It's very exacting, it's very precise. And that really resonated with a part of my brain. So I really enjoyed that. And that's where I spent the majority of my career. So my foundation in science from a pure education standpoint was very useful in giving me a solid foundation in science. And then as my career progressed, there was a lot of self-learning where, you know, I need to know how to write code. Okay, well, here's the manual. So a lot of it was self-taught. And a lot of it was also interacting with my peers and colleagues at work, saying, you know, how do you do this? Or how do you do that? So most of it was learning on the job. And then finally, how did I get from, you know, being an engineer and doing cool engineering stuff into supply chain management? It really was kind of a big pivot. But I draw on the technical background. And so the whole foundation that I've built throughout my career has allowed me to understand kind of all of these different facets of engineering. And so I interface a lot with the engineers, and then I interface with our suppliers and their engineers and work the technology to make sure that they can build our parts successfully. So yeah, lots of on-the-job training.
That's great. I just wanted to point out to our audience that, something that all of the panelists so far have said, which is that they learned as they went through their career, that they both have scientific and technical educations, but that they learn through their careers. So for instance, Iris, you know, pointed out that, you know, not only did she stay in college for what probably sounds like forever to you, but that after that, she does training to keep her up to date. And Katie talked about, going back to school for an MBA. And then she talked about learning sort of on the job as technologies evolved. And then you heard Nancy give a really awesome, description. And I'm particularly impressed that you made good use of the junior college system, which I think is underappreciated, what a bargain it is for letting people in the door and all the on the job training, and then making a big change later in your life. And I think part of the reason that resonates so much for me, and why I hope that our young people hear that, is because I do a job that literally did not exist in the world when I was training. I grew up on a farm. I knew I wanted to be a veterinarian. I loved animals more than you could believe. I wanted to work on, large animals, horses and cattle. Went to vet school, did my undergrad, went to vet school, fell in love with science, just that I never, growing up on a farm, you didn't know scientists. A veterinarian was as much of a scientist as you would know, right? And so I'm like, well, I will become a pathologist and a scientist. And so I did my specialty training, and then I did a PhD, and then I did a postdoc, and I still loved science. But I wanted to start a family. And so I said, going into industry would be like the best of both worlds. I'd have, the time to start a family, and I'd get to do cool science, which proved to be true, right? But what I do for a living is I work on personalized medicine or diagnostics for humans. And so that is a field that really didn't even emerge until I was long out of training. We use technologies that did not exist. And I spend a huge part of my days now, and this is someone who's really got a biology focus, spend a huge part of my days now working on high computational capacity image analysis, right? So I learned nothing of that in college. I learned it all on the job. And that's what makes my job, you can hear from all of these women that they love their jobs. And that's what makes my job cool, is it's never boring. I get to learn new things every day. And so I think that's the commonality that I hope that you're hearing here. I think I'll just throw this open then to the three panelists. What surprised you most in your career? What things sort of were unexpected and interesting as you've progressed through this? Anyone want to jump in with an idea?
Can I jump in case I get paged? Because I already got paged once, and I'm so sorry that I had to turn my camera off. So just in case. So I think one of the things that has surprised me is actually how things have evolved. Like you just said, I think it's amazing that some of the things I do today, I really did not learn in medical school, and I did not learn in my residency, nor in my fellowship. And I'm going to use an example that's very common to all the people attending this panel, and that is COVID-19. A year ago, we did not know this pathogen. We did not know how to treat it. We did not know anything about this disease. And in 1 year, it's affected humanity in its entirety. And at least for me as a physician, I needed to read about this every day, listen to what was coming out on this disease, specifically to my specialty. How was this going to affect pregnant women? How may it affect their babies? How could my job help prevent any disease in this, in my patients? So it just highlights what you all said, that we, you know, part of your career, and the reason you need to choose something that you really love and have a passion for is because to be good and be excellent at what you do, you need to keep learning. Like you need to keep growing, and you need to be you know, have a curiosity and a passion to keep learning, because you know, a year ago I didn't know what COVID-19 was, and now it's part of our lives. You know, we learn how to treat it, we learn how to make things much better for patients. You know, a vaccine is out. I have to say, Lori, you said you worked at Gilead, right?
That's right.
Gilead makes remdesivir. You know, I had the first case of a pregnant patient with severe COVID in the ICU in my hospital. I had to work with Gilead, getting the drug for my patient. You know, it's scary and exciting at the same time. So I think I wasn't expecting that. I thought, okay, I've learned all I need to learn, and now I'm just going to practice my lovely medicine and take care of patients. But you know, things change, right? And I just use COVID because I know we've all been affected by COVID in one way or another. So it's easy to understand that. But at least in my field also, there's been a lot of change in prenatal diagnosis, genetics, the availability of the technologies to, you know, do non-invasive prenatal testing now. So that's more specific to my field, but it just shows how things evolve, and I think it's fascinating.
That's great. I think Nancy's.
Yeah, trying to unmute myself. It's so interesting to hear Iris's perspective. I think the thing that surprised me was how rapidly things change. It's like I worked on the first chip for the touch screen on our phones. When that was brand new, I actually tested the first 200 chips physically in the lab to get them to our customer. And by the end of, you know, 1 year later, it's like all of the top model phones had a touch screen. And the way that just having a touch screen on your cell phone, well, that's enabled all sorts of things in terms of technology and how we use our phones as more of a personal appliance, and how that technology, you know, iPads and our computers with touch screens. It wasn't that long ago that I was literally testing those first few chips, and just seeing how rapidly it revolutionizes the world around us. Working at NVIDIA, and you know, I could relate to what Lori said about, you know, working on technology that didn't exist. A lot of the technology that we're working on now at NVIDIA didn't exist when I joined the company 9 years ago. I mean, it didn't exist. When our CEO first talked about cloud computing, it was like, what do you mean cloud computing? It just seems so odd. Like, really, that's going to be a thing? And, you know, now everything's on the cloud. It's like, yes, the cloud, of course. And when we started investing in autonomous cars, it's like, you know what? Really, we're doing cars and self-driving cars, and all of a sudden it's like, well, yeah, that's the reality. You know, we've all seen the autonomous cars around, and so these were things that just seemed so strange, and just as, or you know, they didn't exist. They were you know, kind of dreams and ideas that were out there just not even a decade ago. And so, you know, seeing how rapidly technology is changing, and as technology gets more advanced, it actually fuels the rate of speed even more. Lori, you mentioned the high resolution imaging. NVIDIA's technology helps drive that, and allowing some of that imaging and analysis of that imaging. And so just as companies have to reinvent themselves, we as workers and practitioners in our fields, we are also constantly reinventing ourselves through, the new knowledge that we gain. And so, yeah, I don't think I realized just how much investment would be, continuing to stay relevant and explore new things. And so, yeah, being in a field that I love and that I'm interested in makes it a joy to do that rather than drudgery. So thank you.
Katie, anything that you want to share that was a
Yeah,
surprise?
no, I mean, I think those are, I concur 100% across the board in terms of the rate that things have changed. And just, I mean, and I hear it in your voices as well, but not only, how enjoyable that has been, but kind of what sense of pride that you have when you're a part of that change and you're a part of making what is new in the world, and being one of the first ones. Like, I feel very similar things with respect to some of the companies I worked at, as well as getting to be a part of like the entrepreneur's journey and funding new companies. I will say the one thing that I didn't expect, definitely going into college, was just how much change I was going to have in my career. And again, I think that might be kind of unique to me, but I've like, whatever you do in college does not necessarily mean that's what you are going to do for the rest of your life. Like, and I guess Lori, you said that a little bit as well, but we live in a fluid world, and like Nancy said, like these things like didn't exist. So it's sort of like you can teach yourself things later too, that like, that your undergraduate education doesn't necessarily sort of define the entire rest of the path of your life, unless you want to be a doctor. Then you better get started on those 15 years.
So that's great. I think, Steve, do we have time for one more question before we
I
open?
think we do. I was going to say that let's try to finish at the bottom of the hour so we could turn to Q&A. But I am really interested about maybe sharing experiences about what's your day job like, and what was your job like day to day?
Yeah, maybe Iris could start because I know she's watching her pager.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I happen to be on call this week, so it's a little busier than usual. So a regular day for me, I clearly my days are usually spent seeing patients. I'll describe a little bit more in detail of what I do in case anyone's interested in obstetrics. So part of my job some days is staffing labor and delivery. So I get to take care of patients during their actual delivery, helping them have their baby. Sometimes it's a surgical delivery, so I also get to do cesarean sections. As a high-risk doctor, I also do some procedures for high-risk patients. One of those can be cervical cerclage, where we do a special procedure to keep a patient's cervix closed so that they don't lose their baby. We have patients that have recurrent pregnancy loss or cervical insufficiency. So some days I might be in the operating room doing that sort of procedure. The days that I'm in clinic, I do prenatal ultrasound. So I get to evaluate the patient's fetus in utero through ultrasound technology, which every year keeps getting better and better, and we can see better and better. And it's always fun to do the ultrasound, and the patient is very happy. So it brings me great joy to be part of that. I also take care of patients, clinic sessions. So some of my clinic sessions are just dedicated, for example, a half afternoon to take care of patients with diabetes. I'm have special interest in patients that are pregnant with diabetes. So we have a collaborative team, and we take care of patients with diabetes that they've had before the pregnancy, as well as gestational diabetes. I also do some clinics for the other high-risk conditions like connective tissue disorders, hypertension, multiple gestations, history of pregnancy loss, and sort of those higher risk conditions. And I also do resident education. So for example, this week that I'm on call, I go to labor and delivery every morning. I round with the residents. We go over the cases of the week. And I also teach medical students as well. And then when the weeks I'm on call, then I round on the patients that have complications that are in the hospital. So if you want to hear a little bit about this week, I've had very interesting cases. I had a pregnant patient that presented with appendicitis. So I had to work together with the surgeons, right? A lot of my work is collaborative because people get very scared when there's a pregnant patient with a medical complication. So I work a lot with other fields in taking care of patients. I had another patient this week present with an obstructing stone in her kidney. And we had to work with urology and interventional radiology, getting her treatment for her obstructing stone. And I also had a patient this week come. This is the first time I've seen this in over 20 years of practice. A pregnant patient with a severely herniated disc of her spine. She came in with severe pain. She couldn't ambulate, and it was very sudden onset. So we had to work together with neurology, neurosurgery, physical medicine, and anesthesia to devise a plan for this pregnant patient with a very complicated neurological condition. So I'm also a member of different committees in the hospital. Part of what I like doing is trying to improve the safety of what we do for our pregnant patients. So I'm a member of the Obstetrics Quality Committee, and I'm the chair of the Perinatal Morbidity and Mortality Committee, which we look at all our patients that present with neonatal deaths or intrauterine deaths, and trying to see if there was anything we could have done to prevent that or to help it from happening again in the next pregnancy. So it's a very varied job, which I love, and yeah, I just love what I do. It's very rewarding.
Okay, thank you, Iris. Katie, you want to run us through a day in your life?
Sure. Like Iris, I also have a very varied day, which I think it probably contributes to, just the day-to-day enjoyment and excitement of the job. So, kind of in any given day, there's a lot of different things I might be doing, probably not all of them in one day, but I meet with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of new companies, probably meet with, somewhere around 50 to 75 new companies every year. So that's, a couple a week usually. I also sit on boards of companies. So, often in any given week, I will have a 3 or 4 hour board meeting where the entire, all of the senior people on the company kind of report things out to the board, solve problems, and things like that. I do a lot of writing. I have to write investment memos. I have to write up notes around meetings, a lot of emails, kind of just coordinating things and scheduling things and, just reporting out on different things. I go to a lot of, in the non-COVID times, I travel a lot. So I probably travel maybe 2 weeks out of the month, not for the whole week, but, a couple nights here and there. I go back to Washington, D.C. a lot to meet with the individuals from the agencies that I work with. I also go and visit companies sort of at their headquarters. If they're not in the Bay Area, that often will require travel. And then I also go to a lot of events and conferences and things like that, where I can find, either learn myself about new technologies or also meet with and find other companies. And then I also meet with a lot of other venture capitalists. So, NVIDIA is a good example. They have a great team that makes investments on their behalf, Nancy's company. And I work closely with them, have some investments in common with NVIDIA. So it's a lot of, meeting with people, writing things up, travel. And then, there's also a lot of kind of independent learning time where, I'll block off a couple of hours here and there throughout the week to just get myself smart on different technologies and areas of interest.
That's great. Nancy, you want to tell them a little bit about your day job?
Sure. My day job, it's a lot of email. Our company moves on email. So it's a lot of time spent communicating and coordinating and aligning. We move very quickly, and the specific job that I do, it's called quick turn. And so from when I get a design to when we deliver it to our customers, we're looking at our customers, meaning my internal customers. We're looking at turnarounds of like 7 to 10 days. So my little team it's always on, and it's always very fast. A couple of things. One, my job is very collaborative. So I'm working with a lot of teams and a lot of different people on other teams, and we're coordinating and we're aligning, because again, we move very quickly. And so the handoffs need to be very clean and very crisp so that we can move quickly. And if you think about a relay race, we're like that anchor leg to get that, you've got the whole team that's running this race. They hand it off to us. We need to make sure that we get it across the line quickly. So there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of coordination and alignment. One of the other things that I heard listening to our wonderful panelists is relationship building. And so a lot of my job is building relationships. It's building relationships with our suppliers so that I can get good response from our partners. It's relationship building with other teams in the company so that, again, we can stay aligned. So that's collaboration and relationship building. So lots of meetings, lots of coordination, analysis, looking at data, negotiating with suppliers, and negotiating with our internal teams. They want it free and yesterday. And it's like, yeah, I can't do that, but I can do this. And so it's always trying to work with them so we set the appropriate expectations. And then the other thing that I do, and it's been such a joy. Well, I manage a team. I have a team of 5 people, 4 of which are in China. 1 is in Oregon. So because my team is all remote, it means a lot of video conferencing they're my team. So as their manager, I'm not only providing guidance on their day-to-day work and setting direction for our team, but I'm also attending to their growth path and making sure that they're happy in their careers and that we're doing things to fuel their growth. The last thing I wanted to mention is I'm part of our Women in Technology group at NVIDIA, and I've been leading our mentorship team for since 2018 when we founded the mentorship portion of it. So I've been working on developing various mentoring programs for the women in tech at NVIDIA. So throughout my day, you know, I'm meeting with different people about mentoring, or I'm mentoring my mentee, or meeting with that team and figuring out, okay, what are the next programs that we need to do? So that's kind of my day.
Great, thanks. And I think my days have elements of many of the things that people have said so far, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'll just say that when I started out, I did a lot more individual science, and now I do a lot more. Most of my job now is both directly as a manager and as a leader. My job is really to set the strategic vision for where we're going, and then gently nudge people down that road so that we get there fast, but people feel empowered when we get there. And I think that's a great joy that I found at this phase of my career. Some days I wish I had more time for the individual science, but you know, every new stage of your career can be exciting if you allow for that. So Steve, I think we're where you wanted to be.
Exactly.
Next part.
Before we close the recording, I first want to say on behalf of the Pacific Skyline Council of Boy Scouts of America, thank you so much for this program. It was fantastic. We learned so much. If I could talk about the 5 themes that I've heard tonight from all of our tremendous panelists. 1 is constant change in your careers. 2, you had growth in your skills over time, including learning things that hadn't been part of the workplace at the time that you started your career. 3rd was the fact that you collaborate so much with other people. And I thought that was really interesting. And 4th, because of that collaboration, you're constantly working with people and building relationships with them. So all of those I think will be helpful to our scouts. And finally, there are so many possibilities for career paths. As you can see, there's a wide diversity of possibilities with science, technology, engineering, and math that I would say to scouts, your career paths are wide open to you. And this is something that if you can work together with other people and you can develop your skills over time, you can have a rewarding career like you've seen all of the successful professionals on our panels have had. So with that, I'm going to, because maybe there are some people who are watching this only on video, I'm going to close out the recorded video session of this and say, again, thank you so much, panelists. It was a tremendous program. We deeply appreciate your spending your time today. And I'm hoping that we will have other panelists in the future to talk about their professional career paths to help promote STEM education in the Pacific Skyline Council.